Hi, how's it going? It's me, Yemmy the Ferret here, and we're gonna go ahead and count down my top 15 games. That's right, 15 games of 2021. And contrary to popular belief, I felt like this year was a great year for gaming, especially in the indie scene. I felt like there were so many great games that came out, and if you're looking for them, you're gonna find great games every single year. So I know a lot of people were doing like, oh, well, I didn't have enough. I have to do top 8 or top, 5 or whatever. But I personally just had so many games that I really enjoyed this year and I had to talk about in one combined video slash podcast. And I said, you know what? This year, we're doing the top 15 and no regrets on that. So please enjoy this top 15 games list. Let me know what your favorite game of the year was, or your games list of the year, because I say this every year and I love making this video every year, but the true game of the year is your game of the year. Don't let other people's opinions sully your enjoyment of any particular game. Just because my game of the year is something different than yours, or maybe I didn't like a game that you loved this year as much, that doesn't diminish the value of the game to you, and that's all that really should matter. So, and if you're listening to this on the Twitch channel while I am live stream reacting to it, hello. And if you're listening to this or watching the video version on my YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching / listening. The podcast version of the episode is going to go up on the same day as the video. So there you go. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoy listening. So before we get into the actual list, I just want to give a few honorable mentions. The first one being the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I would have put this on my list, but I decided against it after realizing, there are a lot more games that deserve to be on it rather than, a remaster / remake. Not really a remake, which is a remaster of the original trilogy. I really still love the original trilogy. Mass Effect kind of took a downward spiral when Andromeda came out. And I know there's some people who do like it, that's fine. Me personally, my controversial opinion is I like the third game. I think the third game is really well done, but that's my controversial opinion of the day. They did so much with the first game, the remaster of it. I feel like the 2 and 3 needed a little bit more tweaking done to them in a few different areas, but for the most part, it's a great trilogy, and if you haven't played the Mass Effect trilogy, what are you waiting for? Also, another game that I would like to mention honorably is the Resident Evil 4 VR. I felt like, even though it's confined to the Oculus Quest, I found that playing the game in VR added depth and changed the gameplay so much that it felt like a new game. It was just a really fun experience, and if you have an Oculus, I would definitely recommend grabbing it. Would I recommend getting an Oculus just for Resident Evil? Probably not, and I'm sure that the game is going to come to, maybe Steam or even the PlayStation VR 2 in the near future, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Either way, it's a great port of the game. It feels way different than any other version, obviously, and I would recommend it. Alright, that's enough faffing about. Let's go ahead and get into the top 15 games of the year, starting with number 15.
We didn't come here on a rescue mission. Wait, I might as well just...
Bex! Bex!
Yeah, number 15 is The Gunk. And I really enjoyed my time with it. It's a bit short, but what they do at that time is a very fun and carefully crafted experience. I loved using the power glove to suck up the different enemies and like the gunk and stuff like that, and I liked how you used it for a lot of puzzles as well. I don't think they didn't go as far as I was hoping they would with the concept and stuff like that. Like, I really wish, like, the craziest that the puzzles get to is, moving platforms with a blower attachment on on your glove. And it's like, okay, I really was hoping for more platforming challenges and stuff like that were a little bit more difficult. But that being said, I think that the art style is really nice in the game. I think the gameplay is nice. It's well suited for a younger audience too. So if you're, concerned about your kid not being able to play the game, you can put those concerns to rest. It's a pretty easygoing game. The story is pretty good in it, and I like the kind of more linear / kind of openness of the areas. Some areas were like super short, and for some reason they needed to put like loading screens between some of these areas that were like way super short, and it was kind of annoying to kind of speed through an area, get to a loading screen almost like a minute after you entered that area. But like I said, I still think it's a very fun game. I think they did a lot of good stuff with it. It has some good characters in it. Just some minor grievances that I can easily overlook. And if you haven't played the Gunk yet, it's a fun, short experience. Probably took me about 4 or 5 hours to complete. So the Gunk, number 15.
Hey.
Hey. Well, hello.
Hi.
Yo. Good day.
Number 14 is Boyfriend Dungeon. It's kind of crazy to me that I liked this game as much as I did. Obviously, it's geared mostly towards a female demographic, especially in how your character looks. No matter what clothing you put on it, you usually have cleavage with it. The nice thing is you can play this game whatever way you want to. If you just want to be friends with everyone, you can be friends with everyone. If you want to romance everyone, you can romance everyone. You can break the game and have every single character show up at the end of it, because you romance them through the entire game. It's actually quite funny. I ended up doing that, and it was just like a kind of a fun. I don't know, it was just kind of a fun thing, you went through everyone's story, you got to see it all. The main part of the game is going through these dungeons. It is kind of like a roguelite, where you go through these dungeons with these weapons, and you are actually romancing the weapons throughout the game. There's areas you can go to, give your weapons gifts that they might like, spend time with them in a dilapidated mall, or in a groovy dance room, and you also meet them out in the world too. Not like it's more of like a visual novel style out in the world, away from the dungeon. And I did like the art style. I thought the character designs were really smartly drawn. There really was something for everyone, and it catered. I guess I wouldn't say it catered to a specific demographic, but there's plenty of different options for you to choose if you so desire. And like I said, it's mostly geared towards the women in the audience, but being a man and being a person who I'm not a huge fan of roguelites, for this game to end up on the list in any way is actually quite interesting to me personally, just from that standpoint, because I'm not a huge fan of either of those genres. I'm visual novels and or roguelite, but here I am talking about another roguelite on the list. Hades was last year. This year it's Boyfriend Dungeon. It's just a fun time. I didn't take it too seriously, and it was on Xbox Game Pass, so I said, why not?
Is everyone trying to kill you?
It kind of seems like it.
Yes, number 13 on the list is Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite really, really surprised me with how good the gameplay feels. It's one of those things, it's like you go from Halo 4 and Halo 5, and those games just did not feel good at all. But Halo Infinite comes around, and they went back to the basics of, just really focusing on making that gameplay super, super good. And that's where the multiplayer and the main story really, really excel. If you want a good combat experience, Halo Infinite is the game for you. If you don't care about story, it has the gameplay to keep up with the lack of story if you so desire. One of the greatest parts of the campaign is just zipping around with the grappling hook. It really adds verticality to the game, and it's not like, I would say it's overpowered, but it's not overpowered in the multiplayer, which is what I was thinking it was going to happen. I guess the real big gripe with this game is how the multiplayer does its battle pass and stuff like that. Even though I enjoy doing the challenges, it's kind of a different way to do the battle pass system. I'm not a huge fan of spending money on things that probably should have been in the game already, like different cosmetic items and stuff like that. I would rather have just had a ranking up system, and maybe after the game's been out for a little while, add in a battle pass of content or something like that, you know? I really would have rather that happen. But I would say, you know, the gameplay does stand on its own, and you don't really have to get these cosmetic items, obviously. And the campaign does give you a lot of different things to equip to your multiplayer character. Not, you know, it's nothing too crazy, you know. And I would also say that the story is not, like, really amazing. I don't want to dive into too many spoilers, since the game is probably the relatively most newest game to come out on this list, but the story just wasn't cutting it. You know, I felt like it was fine, like the story was fine, but I wish that it ended after a certain boss fight instead of going to the final boss fight. If you played it, you know. And then I also felt like they focused on a particular character way too much. I know the character is is a character that is synonymous with the name Master Chief and Halo, but I just felt like it just focused way too much on that certain character, and that kind of brought the campaign down for me personally. Other than that, I love the open world aspect of it. Beating these like high value targets, getting special weapons, earning new vehicles to drive around. Just the one thing is, I really just wish that there was co-op from the get-go. This game is built for co-op. Driving warthogs with other with AI characters does not feel the same as driving around a warthog with a physical player, you know, gunning with you, or being on a tank with you, or being, you know, having both of you in a Banshee or in a Wraith. You know, it just detracts so much from the experience not to have that co-op element. And I really do hope that when the co-op element does come out, that it works, because I really just want to play the co-op version of this campaign. Solo, like I said, solo, it's fine, you know, it's not terrible solo. It's just, it would have been so much more fun to run around this map on co-op, and that's why it's this low on the list, because it is missing a few key elements that I think would have risen this game to a higher standard.
Odd? Where are you? I'm coming for you, sis.
Water!
Odd!
What do we do to those who stand in our way?
We destroy them, my queen.
Number 12 is Lost in Random. This is a very smartly designed dice rolling card game. So you roll your dice and you get a number 1 through 6. Eventually in the game you get 1 through 6. And depending on what cards you have in your hand, you can play as many as you can, you know, because each of them costs like 1 to 6 die, you know, on the die, right? You get what I'm saying? I hope you get what I'm saying. Hopefully there's some gameplay behind me that'll explain it a little bit better. But I think the main reason why I really enjoyed this game was this Tim Burton, you know, Corpse Bride, Nightmare Before Christmas art style that's in the game. They really did a good job of they have the designs of the characters are all unique, but it's visually easy enough to compare the two without being like, oh, it's a complete ripoff, because it's just it feels like the game is more so, creating this game as an homage to the Tim Burton style rather than copying it completely. The one thing that I was really hoping they would do in the game was to sync up the lips and stuff with what the characters are saying. It just gets a little bit annoying as the game goes on. It does have a very strong story. Each area of the game is based on what number is on the die. So area 1 is like the lowest working class, you know, they barely have anything area. You go through that. The 2 area, everyone has like 2 personalities to them. So the mayor has like this split personality growing out of his head that kind of looks like Scarecrow from the Batman Arkham series, and his name isn't Mayor. It's Mayor spelled backwards. So I think it's Yoram or something like that. Mayor. And it's just a really interesting concept. And then you go to the 3 world, and yeah, it does seem kind of you know, it's like, duh, you're going 1 through 6 on this world thing. It's like, yeah, but 3 world does an interesting thing where it has 3 dueling siblings who are trying to inherit the throne because they think one of them killed their father, right? And you go through that whole section, and there's like this boogeyman in the background who you're trying to you know, fight as well. It does kind of lose its way after that, though. I feel like they just didn't have a good enough idea for the 4-ville or the 5-ville. The 6th one is fine. I think the concept is a good idea. And, you know, it's one of those things, it's like, you kind of lost your way in the middle there, but in the end, you did finish strong. I feel like the combat does feel a little bit repetitive after a while, mostly because you do start to use like the same cards over and over and over again. You do earn more cards as you go through it, and obviously as you can roll higher, you get much stronger. You're able to do more things, you know, from pulling out a spear to pulling out a bomb, planting bombs, planting multiple bombs, all these different things. And to earn energy to roll your dice, you got to hit like these pinpoint areas on an enemy. They're like blue crystals, and once you hit those areas, you can earn enough energy to roll your dice and pull as many cards as you need to pull or want to pull. So it's a very interesting concept, just kind of weighed down by a midway lull through the game. And it just, I think that because I think the combat really starts to show its cracks when you are fighting those more intense, bigger than life enemies, right? And the enemies, you know, the way that beat almost every enemy in the game is to shoot the crystal on them and then use your dice rolling ability. And I feel like they could have done something a little bit more interesting with that concept. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things that they actually do during the game. Like you have like this whole like, you got like these chess pieces, and you're trying to move the one piece along the board, and you have to go through waves of enemies, and different things unlock, and it does have some cool things like that. But there are moments in the game where, especially during the 4 and 5-ville, that you go, I'm just kind of going by the numbers, and I'm starting to feel, I don't know, just a little bit kind of bored with the combat eventually. But that being said, I know I sometimes will go a little bit too negative with when I'm talking about a game. That being said, it is still a very nice looking, well scripted, fun game that has a lot of good voice acting, a lot of interesting character designs and enemy designs, and I think that's a game that you should check out if you have the time.
The time has come to strike.
All right, number 11 is Chorus. This is a fast-paced third-person space combat game, and it's almost, I mean, I've never really played a game like this. I'm sure that there are space games out there. I think there was one that was free called like Rebel Galaxy that was on the PlayStation Plus a long time ago, but it didn't feel like this game. You know, the amount of like maneuverability in the game is crazy. It's fast paced. You can go as fast as you can. There's just so much going on in the game combat wise, and the story isn't too bad at all either. I just felt like the main character was a bit more dull than she should have been. For the most part, I think every aspect of the game is really well done. The open world aspect of the space is nice. The visuals are great. The combat feels fun. You got all these different abilities that you can unlock while you go through the game, including one where you can like, you know, it's called like Star Shot, where you turn into like a blazing fireball and you can ram through enemies. There's another one that disables enemies with an electric pulse. There's another one that like immediately snaps you behind an enemy and you can take them out from behind. There's multiple weapons to use as well, like missile launchers, the shield laser that can take down shields, and then there's like a regular Gatling gun, and there's plenty of different variations of those weapons to use. So you're always, I mean, I was switching up my weapons a lot, and eventually I found a trio of weapons that I liked the most. You know, I think that the side missions are pretty good. They do kind of kind of like bore the game down a little bit. So if you're just going for the story, you can probably get through that pretty fast, all things considered. You might not be as leveled up as you want to be by the end of the game, but you know, I still think that it's worth it to go through some of the, if not most of the side missions and stuff like that. I felt like the boss fights in the game, you know, being like what the game is with being like this spaceship combat game, I thought the bosses were actually pretty well designed. The last boss in the game is like this big like moving, like, it's almost like a tentacle monster made out of rocks, and there's like weak points along it, and it was a pretty interesting and tough battle, and I found it very enjoyable. Like I said, really the only thing that kind of like, I didn't like the main character. I thought that she was a little bit too bland, and she also had this weird thing where she would think her thoughts. You would hear her thoughts, but she wouldn't actually say some things. Like, she would think saying thanks to someone, but she wouldn't actually say thank you to them. It's like, I don't understand why you don't just say thank you. But other than that, I felt like the game was just really fun. So, you know, of course, number 11. Alright, now we get into the big boys, the top 10 games of the year. Everything else before this doesn't matter. Everything else before this does not matter. So we're coming out hot, with number 10 being the Guardians of the Galaxy video game that came out this year. It's a very enjoyable experience. The combat is really fun as you go through it. Obviously, you get some different special moves, like an ice gun, another gun that kind of pulls enemies towards you so you can melee them real quickly. I think the real highlight of the game, though, is working with the other Guardians of the Galaxy. You can only play as Star-Lord, but you can ask your other squad mates to do specific things. Like, you know, Drax has this move where he can grab an enemy and instantly stun them. Gamora has a move where she can instantly execute a weak enemy or do massive damage to a strong enemy. Groot, he can like trap enemies in his vines. Rocket, he can throw a grenade. You know, there's a whole bunch of different things that they can also learn to do as well as you grow in XP. And I think that the game is very strong in that story element of bringing the team together again. Because the team, you know, because Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, they're a bunch of misfits. They all come together and they form like this group that's, you know, the Guardians of the Galaxy. And you have this like larger-than-life kind of story to the game where this like religious cult is taking over, and they're taking over people's minds, and they're using their life force to power this like giant world-ending, galaxy-ending thing. And as you go through the game, you know, there's a lot of different things you can do to help better your chances of survival. But that's the thing, though. As you go through the game, there are choices to make, and I feel like most of those choices really don't affect anything, right? I think that you would really have to go out of your way to try and do the wrong things, the wrong decisions to get the worse endings or a more challenging experience. You know, there's a moment where Cosmo comes in and he blasts away a bunch of enemies, and if you don't free him from the grasp of this cult, then he won't show up to do that. But it's like, well, then there must be something else either in its place or something, because that's a pretty big moment, or maybe that moment just doesn't happen. You know, I feel like the choice-based things in this game aren't as strong as the main story itself, and it feels more like a Telltale game in the way that it goes about doing its story-based stuff. And, you know, even though there's nothing wrong with liking a Telltale-style story, I do find it a bit annoying when the graphics look so good in this game, the story is so well written in this game, that when you actually do have a choice, it just doesn't feel like it's really that impactful of a choice, all things considered. The boss fights in the game, some of them were really, really well done. I love the Cthulhu monster that you fight at one point in the lair of the Beast Queen. The final boss fight was very lackluster. I almost wish that they had taken that like entire last chapter out, because that final chapter is literally just the boss fight at the end of the game, and I felt like that boss fight was so weak compared to everything else you did in the game. There's a lot of great nods to Marvel properties. Guardians of the Galaxy obviously it has a lot of stuff going on and there's a lot of fun characters to meet and things to do in the game. I ran into a few too many glitches to put this game higher on the list, in my opinion, but I felt the game is still very, very good. It's still well done. It's leagues better than the Avengers game that came out from Square Enix. I felt like this game was just so much better than that Avengers game. Like it's a wonder what you can do when you actually have a story written for a character and a group of characters that isn't just like because Avengers just loses its way so often, but Guardians of the Galaxy, it knows what it wants to do. There's some very, very great emotional moments in this story. I think back to when you're talking to Drax on Nowhere. That's just such a great, gripping moment. It makes you kind of tear up as he's talking about, as Peter and him are talking about loss and stuff like that. I think the one character that kind of got forgotten about in this game is Gamora. She barely has anything going on for her in this game, and when she does have something going on, it just kind of like skips over she does have like an emotional moment, obviously, but that's so far into the game, and I feel like it's just so glossed over eventually, and it's just kind of like, it's kind of weird because everyone else kind of gets their comeuppance. Everyone else has their big story beat that makes their that grows their character. Even Groot has that moment, and it's just unfortunate that Gamora kind of did not get the same level of, because there's Rocket has like an entire chapter of the game dedicated to him. Drax has like 3 chapters of the game dedicated to him. Groot has a sequence dedicated to him, and Gamora has like 2 lines of dialogue where she grows as a character, more than, it's one of those things. It's like, it could have been maybe written a little bit better. It's still a very, very, it's still a good game though. I would say it's a good game, not a very, very good game. It's a good game. I would still recommend it, especially if you're a Marvel fan or you're a Guardians of the Galaxy fan. The characters, the new character designs, the people who voice the characters, very, very well done. I felt like the game it was a lot of fun all the way through up until like that last final battle, and it was worth a playthrough. So if you want to check it out, make sure you do. Guardians of the Galaxy number 10. Number 9 on the list is Toem, and this is a game that probably is not as well known to many people as it should be, but this is an indie game. It's all in black and white, and you go through this game taking pictures of various things. You have a lot of film roll to fill up, so don't worry about not having enough space on your camera to get through it all. So your journey is pretty much just you're trying to get to the top of this mountain to experience what's called Toem, and it's a very beautiful and well designed game. Even though it's kind of like a top down kind of thing, but you have like a 3D environment that you can kind of move the map around and try and get the best angle for something. And it's a very lovely game. The music is nice and calming, and the game is it's fun to talk to everyone, do all the side quests in there. There's more difficult ones that you need to get to, like getting a specific picture done. Like, there was one towards the end of the game where you had to make your camera dirty in order to get a picture that this art enthusiast would like. It was just kind of like just a funny kind of dialogue in there. It's hard to really describe this game because you just kind of got to play it to understand. I can tell you that it's about taking pictures, but actually playing the game and working around with the mechanics is something that you really can't replicate in speech, obviously. So Toem, it's a very lovely game. I really enjoyed my time with it. It's a shorter game, so it's not going to take up too much of your time. It's a short, it's a very short and sweet experience. I like how there's like these rare pictures that you can also take that kind of have like it's almost like getting a rare Pokemon card where it's like shiny and it's glistening, you know, and it's like, oh, that's a very nice picture you took there. And there's a bunch of those in the game too. And then the final picture that you take in the game is just it's so beautiful because this whole world is black and white, right? And this thing on top of the mountain, Toem, it's like Aurora Borealis, but it's like every color in the spectrum. It's just such a lovely and beautiful finale to the game. And it's one of the reasons why I did put it on like my games list for the Ferret Awards, saying it is a moment that kind of just takes your breath away. You just kind of want to stare at it and look at it because it is a beautiful moment, and it was a real nice finale for the journey in the game.
King Ratchet gazed down upon his withered claws, barely able to hold the crown. He had little hope wielding a sword. So it was decided, the crown should pass to Whiskers New. Arise, young prince, for the kingdom needs a hero. And so, your tale begins.
Number 8 is Tales of Iron. This is a 2D Souls-like kind of Metroidvania game where you go along this 2D space, and you are a mouse who has become king, but as you become king, shit goes wrong. You know, the frogs attack and they burn your village, and the whole game is pretty much, I mean, I would say, yeah, it's kind of about revenge in a way, but it's also about growing as a character and becoming a leader when obviously you're not ready to take on the reins. It's a very fun story. It's all told through, like, when the animals speak, they have different instruments, so, you know, it's mostly like a flute or a recorder or whatever, doing the noises for the voices of the characters. But there's also a narrator in the game as well. It does such a great job narrating the game. The guy does sound like the Stanley Parable narrator, and I forgot to check that. I forgot to check that before starting recording this, but I love the narrator's voice in the game. He does a great job of talking, just kind of talking through what's happening on the screen. But he's not there all the time, so there are moments where, the character will talk to you. It'll show an image of you running to a door, right? And that kind of gives you your idea of what you need to do next. And I felt like the way that this game goes about, going to these different areas, you have like the above ground stuff, you have the underground stuff, you have the way underground stuff, you have like the old cities and stuff like that. It just, visually the game is very appealing, musically the game is very appealing, and combat-wise the game is also very appealing as well. This game has a very nice combat style. There's a lot of different things that you can, I kind of lost my train of thought for a second there. I apologize, but the game, there's a lot of different weapons to find, a lot of different armor to find, a lot of cool bosses to find. I think I was about to talk about the combat. The combat's really interesting because you have your regular attacks, you have your heavy attacks, you have your shield that you can raise. And when the enemies attack you, there's different visual cues. So a white attack is an attack that you can dodge, you can block. A red attack is a move that you have to dodge, you cannot block it. Yellow is an attack that can be parried. So it's just a fun way of visualizing what you need to do without like specifically telling you, like a game like Rise Son of Rome. I found the game to be, it did have some challenging moments. I really enjoyed the new weapons that you got throughout the game. I stuck with Thor's hammer for quite a long time, which is the side quest that you can do. Yeah, I think there's a lot of run around in the game, running from one area to the next, but I think it's all worth it. There's a lot of fun areas to get to, a lot of fun secrets to uncover, and there's a pretty good DLC for or add-on for the game called Bloody Whiskers that I think enhanced the experience. It added a bunch of new boss fights that were fun to do, but they were a little bit easier than I was expecting, obviously. I just find the game to be really charming and very fun, and if you want to check it out, I would definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you're a fan of like a Metroidvania or a Souls-ish type game, because there are a lot of good, fun elements in here, a lot of nice enemy variety, some good boss fights in there, mixed in with some more mediocre ones, but for the most part, it's a very fun game, and I would definitely recommend it.
Me and you, yeah!
What are you doing?
You're not feeling it? No. Okay. You're entitled to your own opinion.
All right, number 7 on the list is It Takes Two, and yes, it does in fact take 2 people to complete this game. It's a very fun co-op game, and it has a lot of different styles in it in terms of like gameplay, visuals, etc. Like, it seems like every chapter or every sequence in the game, they're trying something different, they're trying something new. I mean, just as an example, I mean, this is a platformer kind of co-op game, right? So just as an example, you know, you start off doing like basic platforming, going through this area with like in like a shed or something like that, and then you get to this part where you're using vacuums to, you know, blow up and down and try and do different puzzles with the blowing mechanic. And then you run into like this hammer who one character is able to use the hammer to, you know, do puzzles where you need like slam on things, and the other character gets the nails and they're able to throw the nails and stop conveyor belts and pin things to the walls and stuff like that. And it all culminates into like this boss battle with a toolkit, and you're doing all this stuff with the toolkit, and he's got all these different moves, and you know, it's a very interesting sequence of events that keeps it up throughout the entire game. So it's not like after that, oh, it starts to get a little bit more lackadaisical, right? After that, you know, you get a grapple hook ability, you get you get like this matchstick bazooka and this goop gun, and you have all these different elements to do with that. And at one point, it turns into like a Street Fighter / Mortal Kombat type 2D fighting game, and you do like a boss fight with one of the characters. And there's just so much going on in the game, and it just is a very nicely designed game. Did it deserve to get Game of the Year? Obviously, on my list, it did not deserve to get Game of the Year, but I think that it is a very good game. It's a very nice experience. It's something that you can pick up, you can play for a few hours, put it down, come back to it. It's fun to play, obviously, with people that you know, people that you love. You know, it's got a nice story to it. It does get a little bit gruesome at some parts. I mean, there's a scene where you're literally like tearing apart this elephant who is, you know, in this game, everything's kind of come to life. So the toolkits come to life, the hammer, the you know, squirrels, you know, all these different things can talk now that wouldn't usually be able to talk. So this whole time you're trying to get to like the top of this toy castle, and all of a sudden you get to the top and you're just like tearing this elephant apart, trying to make your daughter cry because you think that she put some voodoo hex on you. I guess the most annoying part of the game is the book that comes and greets you. I think that he's a very annoying character. Luckily, though, towards the end of the game, he kind of stops being so annoying. He kind of takes a more backseat role, which I think fits with how the game is designed. I do think that also the story, like, all of a sudden, the two characters just kind of like start getting along all of us. It is very much all of a sudden, and I think the acting from the daughter is a little bit, you know, not as good as it could be. But that, I digress. It's still a very good game. I think that it's a very fun, quick-paced game. Lots of little secrets in there to get to, and it's a pretty fun platinum trophy to obtain as well. So if you want to check it out, I would recommend doing that. Make sure you got someone to play with, and it does follow the same format as A Way Out, in which you can buy one copy of the game. You can either play it couch co-op, or you can use the friend pass system, which is a very nice thing for them to do. And I'm excited to see what this developer does next. Obviously, you know, the person who leads the game development already said the next game is really going to blow your socks off. It's like, hold on, live in the moment a little bit, enjoy the praise you're getting for It Takes Two before talking so highly of your next game, because It Takes Two really is a special experience. And I don't know if this is their magnum opus, but you know, it's a game that's going to live in my heart for a while, because it's just a fun platforming adventure game. You know, there's not much else to say.
Friend. Cicero, you're a traitor to all partisans. I'll knock some sense into you!
Alright, the next game up, number 6, is Fist, Forged in Shadow Torch. This is a game that I recently finished, and I am very glad that I did. It's a Metroidvania with melee-focused combat, And honestly, I feel like it is the best Metroidvania of the year. I know that a lot of Metroid Dread fans out there are probably scowling at me right now, but I enjoyed Metroid Dread, but Fist was just such a more entertaining and fun and interesting game throughout its course, and I ended up playing it way more than Metroid Dread. I actually knocked the game out when I was recovered from the booster shot, and I was just like in this like daisy haze, and I was just like playing through the game, and I was just having so much fun, and I couldn't stop playing even though I felt terrible, you know. And I think that is a testament to how fun the game is. And you know, the game also has some challenging elements in there as well. I mean, you start off the game with basically nothing, just like any Metroidvania, and as you go through the game, it gets so much better as the game goes on. It gets so much better, in fact, that I found the combat and everything to be just much more refreshing, much more fun than something like Metroid that is really kind of one note with its weaponry. You know, you have a gun, you have a missile launcher, you know, you have bombs that you can place. Whoop-de-doo. In Fist, you have the big iron fist that you use for your basic melee combos, but then eventually you get a drill attachment, so you can use the drill to add on to those combat to those combos, and then eventually you get this electric whip that you can also add into those combos, and the game just gets so interesting as you mix and match these different weapons together to really become the destroyer of worlds. You know, it's a very fun and refreshing take on a Metroidvania. I'm not like a super big, coming into this year, I was really not that big of a fan of Metroidvania, but I think with Fist and, you know, Tales of Iron and other games that came out this year, I really started to grow into liking Metroidvanias a lot more. And Fist's combat style kept things flowing, kept things really, you know, fast-paced, while also keeping that level of challenge that you want, not too difficult, but not way too easy. And by the end of the game, I did become quite the combo master, especially with the whip. So, you know, even though the final boss was difficult, I felt like it was fair. I mean, just like any of these games that I've talked about today that has a heavy emphasis on combat, there are patterns you need to look for, and with those patterns comes just a very fun experience with a lot of cool bosses, some very interesting set pieces and, you know, sequences, a very fun map to traverse, a very interesting story that does get better as the game goes on. Same thing with the combat, you know, as the game goes on, it gets better. If the game started out like this, where I was like super hyped about the combat and the story and the blah blah blah, then it probably would be a little bit higher on this list. But, you know, it does take a little while to, you know, it's like a good soup, right? Good soup. It's like a good soup. It's gotta kind of sit for a little bit. You know, it's gotta really soak in those different flavors. You know, it's really gotta make something beautiful. And this game really does make something beautiful at about like the you know, when you're 25% completed with the game, that's when it starts to really start to amp up things, give you new weapons, give you new abilities, give you more story elements, and that's when the game really starts to kick it into high gear. And that's when I really started to enjoy it enough that I played it 2 days straight without looking back. No regrets. Really enjoyed Fist, and I would recommend it to anyone who's a fan of Metroidvanias or anything like that. I mean, it is a super interesting take on the Metroidvania genre, having it being so melee focused. I mean, I know there's other melee focused games in the genre. I just feel like this is the one that, like, it's done it the best, you know. And honestly, and I know some people out, I mean, look, if you liked Metroid Dread, that's perfectly fine, but in my opinion, Fist takes the cake on this list. I mean, I was gonna put Metroid Dread on here for a while, and I ended up just really enjoying Fist so much more that it took Metroid Dread's place, and then it moved up on the list to the 6th slot. So that is a testament to how good the game is. If you haven't played it yet, you know, maybe it's not your style. That's fine. You know, it doesn't have, you know, you don't have to play anything that I recommend, but it is a game that I feel like actually fully got me into this Metroidvania style game. And, you know, on top of that, I mean, you know, Hollow Knight is also a melee-focused Metroidvania that I really enjoyed. So maybe these melee-focused Metroidvanias are the ones that, you know, are the ones that I'm into. Maybe I should try out some more of the melee-focused ones. But that's besides the point. If you're looking for a fun time, Fist is definitely there. And funny enough, I mean, it's one of the first games I've ever played directly from China. It was made by a Chinese developer, and through, I think, PlayStation, they got some sort of grant that got, they were able to localize it to different places, put it on the PlayStation Network, stuff like that super easily, and I'm so glad that they did that because it is just such a fun game. Nice combat, great music, a fun story, and some really, really good boss fights mixed in there. So if you want to check it out, I would recommend you do.
Ratchet, we are too late. Ratchet?
Who?
Yes, we've gotten to the top 5, and starting off the top 5 is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. It's a fun continuation of the story that they established in the 2016 game. I mean, the graphics, whew, they did such a good job with this. I think this is like the first must-play game on the PS5, right? I know it's not like a giant, huge game, I know it's not like the biggest game ever, It's like I don't know. People are saying it's like a 12-hour experience, and I think it's a little bit less than that, but I think that it has a really, look, it's a Ratchet and Clank game. It's got great combat. The story's pretty good. I like the new characters they introduced, like Rivet. And there's a whole bunch of different story beats that they hit in this game that I think it really does a good job of doing. And I feel like the game doesn't have as strong of bosses as the 2016 game did. There was some very, very much overused enemies in the game that had a huge health bar, but there were some good regular bosses as well. Don't get me wrong, but there are some enemies that are just they come up so often. It's I don't know why you couldn't have just done something a little bit different for this, So, I think that Ratchet, like I said, it's a nice continuation of the series. It feels really good. This is one of the first games that's not the Astro's Playroom, that is really enhanced by the DualSense controller features. When you're wall running, you can feel the static electricity going through the controller is really cool. Each gun kind of feels a little bit different, and I think that does elevate the gameplay a lot, and it does feel like a game that's if you don't play it on PS5, which obviously you can't play it on any other platform as of yet, if you don't play it on PS5, you are missing out on something. And I mean, is this a console seller? No, but is it a must-play game on the PS5 if you have one? Yes, obviously. I think that it's a really good game. It has a lot of fun moments in there. The worlds you explore, a lot of them are pretty cool, and they utilize this whole dimensions thing. You hit a crystal and you go to a different dimension, and it's completely different. In this one area, you're on an asteroid belt, but it's supposed to be a functioning one, but it's actually blown up and split apart. But when you hit the dimension crystal, it takes you back to a different dimension where the crystal didn't blow up. So there's a lot of fun things like that. There's some really fun side quests to do in the game as well. This whole section where you are helping a chef create the best meal ever, and I just felt that was just a really fun kind of moment in the game. There's a lot of those moments where it's just it's just fun. You're just having a good time, and yeah, there's not much more I can say. The negatives just kind of come from the story being a little bit too predictable in a lot of different ways. And I felt like the replayability was a little bit low on it. I know I went through the game twice, going through it on the hardest difficulty with the Omega weapons, but also going through it on the normal difficulty as well. And I do feel like it does kind of lose a little bit of its charm when you're paying $70 for a game that is just the story, a 12-hour story. I don't want to get into that full conversation here, obviously, but just because the game has replayability with better enhanced weapons doesn't mean that you shouldn't put in more stuff to do. There's this part where you do this wave defender and you can replay them as many times as you want. I feel like it needed more stuff like that. Or how in the 2016 game there's the races you could do and stuff. I feel like it needed a little bit more to it, but I feel like the package you get is fun. They did a good job with it, a great job with it even. The voice acting's all good. The combat's nice and fluid. The different areas you go to are varied and fun to kind of mess around with. And all in all, I think that it's a very well put together game, well designed game. And yeah, that's why it's number 5 on the list.
boring. Mother Miranda.
It's just a local tale.
If it's just looking, window shop away.
All right, we're going to number 4, which is Resident Evil Village, aka Resident Evil 8. This is my most played through game this year, and that's saying a lot because I've replayed a lot of these games. But Resident Evil Village, I've played through a grand total of 7 times, and I am on my 8th playthrough. I had a lot of fun speed running the game after I was done with my initial playthrough. I had a lot of fun with it though. I will always remember that first playthrough, you know, being a little bit stingy with your money, trying to get through the areas with the limited amount of ammo they give you, you know, getting to these different areas for the first time. Like, I mean, still, even now when I'm speedrunning the game with the best weapons ever, I still feel the intensity of that section at House Buenavito or whatever it's called, where you're in the basement, you know, trying to get around the disgusting mutated child that's like this huge like thing, you know. And that is there's a lot of great moments in this game, and they take a lot of like inspiration from the different games that they put out. You know, there's action in there, like the Resident Evil 7 action, but then there's also like giant set piece moments like in Resident Evil 6 or 5. You know, there's some moments that are way too focused on combat, like Resident Evil 5, but they're still fun to go through. They're complete ammo dumps, but you know, it's fun to kind of go through in a different style. There's there's parts in the game that reminded me of Resident Evil 4. There's parts in the game that reminded me of Resident Evil 2. There's parts in the game that were entirely something new, like the whole factory with Heisenberg. I felt like that was like that is like a Resident Evil 8 type part of the game, you know, because you can say like the first part of the game with Castle Demiscu is like Resident Evil 2. You know, you have the figure following you around, and you know these different areas, like the you know multiple areas to go to. It feels like a Resident Evil 2 type experience. The hub area of the village is really fun. You know, you're continuously unlocking new things or being able to do new things. You know, going around. It does change periodically as you continue the story. You know, it's a nice hub world, or hub area, I should say. There's an area that's pretty much just one big boss fight that I had a lot of fun with. It's pretty intense. Where you're like battling the fish guy, Monroe. It kind of reminded me of Resident Evil 4 in that aspect. Like I said, you know, it does take a lot of inspiration from around the different Resident Evil games. It even takes inspiration from the Outlast series with the House Buenavito section that I was talking about. You literally don't have any weapons, and you're trying to go around and do these puzzles and escape this mutated child, and then you have like this big grand ending where you're trying to find the doll that's the motherfucker, you know. But I found the game to be very enjoyable. I wish that it utilized the DualSense controller a little bit better, you know, because it's pretty much just like aiming and firing your gun is the only thing that they do with the adaptive triggers. But I felt like you know, there were some really good boss fights in there. There's a lot of great sequences, a lot of great visuals. They keep the gameplay changing up, keeping it fresh. You know, there's sections that do feel like a Resident Evil game where you're going around an area and you're just like trying to do puzzles to find your way to get through, you know, Resident Evil 2 style. But then there's also areas that, you know, your gun's blazing going through it. You know, you're trying to just kind of escape the horde of enemies that they're throwing at you. And you know, it's a lot of fun, and there's a reason why I played through this game so many times, and it's because the game is just super fun. It's a very fun time to play through. They give you a lot of fun weapons. You can unlock more weapons. The Mercenaries mode, it's a free add-on. After you finish the game, you can unlock it, and it's a very fun score-based arcade mode that you could play. The only thing about the game that I would say is a negative is Ethan Winters. he was fine in Resident Evil 7. I felt like he was a fine character in Resident Evil 7. He was a little bit bland, but he wasn't like super cringy like he is in Resident Evil 8. I mean, they gave him one-liners and shit out the wazoo. He was a stupid character. He was making the dumbest decisions. He was saying the stupidest things. This whole time where he's going through like Heisenberg's factory, like, just team up with Heisenberg. Like, what are you doing? Like, team up with him when he defeats Lady Miranda. Just take him out. Like, that's the perfect idea. That's the way you should do it. But instead, he's like, I don't give a shit about your family issues. And you keep saying that throughout the entire fucking game. But it's like, dude, you inserted yourself into this family situation, quote unquote, and you are literally killing the entire family. Don't tell me that you don't care about their family issues. And he's also a huge dick to a lot of characters as well, like Monroe. I mean, this character who obviously, I mean, look, he's just trying to impress, be the best. Like, you understand where I'm coming from when you play the game, and you get to that section where Monroe's like, oh, I'm just, I'm so lonely. He's just saying all this stuff, and you're like, you should probably feel a little bit sympathetic for this guy. He's disgusting, and he's just, I mean, what do you want him to do? Ethan Winters. Yeah, I don't like Ethan Winters as a character, but I do really enjoy the character that they modeled after me, Heisenberg. Also, Lady Demascu's fun. Don't get too attached to her, though, because like I've said in podcasts before, she is like in only like 20% of the game, as opposed to what, I mean, Mr. X is in like 100% of Resident Evil 2, whereas, Lady Demascu's in like, 20%. You get to the castle part, she's done, And the same thing happens for a lot of the other characters, but don't get too attached to any characters. I just felt like they did such a great job with this game, and just to have Ethan Winters be like this one-liner, son of a bitch, was just kind of disappointing. But all in all, it's still an excellent game. There's a reason why I played it so many times. I have fun with the game. It's fun. It's got some good moments in it, and once you get the Magnum, you're good to go. Unlimited ammo. And of course, coming in number 3 is Death's Door. That's right. When I first heard about this game, it was through a YouTuber who was playing a bunch of Steam games that he found that had the tag Souls-like, and he had mentioned that this Death's Door game had just came out, and I had to check it out. I think what really drew me in at first was the visual style. I think that's what really would draw anyone in, really. Once you get playing the game, the visual, the art, the graphic design, the art style is just so unique. Something different that you really haven't seen in any other game up until this point. And along with that beautiful art style is a beautiful soundtrack as well. There's a very, very nice soundtrack to this game. It's one that it has those slow moments, it has quick moments, it's got epic moments, just like the game. The game also has a combination of, like, there's some times where you're kind of just running around, it's going a little bit slower. There's action-paced sections, and there's some truly epic sections, and everything in this game really combines very well to make the whole package complete. The combat, it's okay. There's a few different weapons that you can choose, and there's also some special abilities like a fireball, a bow and arrow, with the bomb, the big bomb, and also my favorite, which is the hook shot, which allows you to like zip around the map when there's an anchor point. And all that really combines to make like such a great experience. I would have liked the combat to be fleshed out a lot more. Each weapon kind of has this little like 3-hit combo or 2-hit combo, depending on if you're using like the heavy hammer. I guess the daggers do like a 4-hit combo or 5-hit combo, but on my 4th playthrough of the game, that's where I really started to notice, like, okay, the combat isn't as fun as I thought it was, but it's still a very, very good game. So don't let one negative thing like kind of hinder your experience or draw you away from it. It's a very minor thing, and it really isn't that bad, all things considered. It's just, you know, it could have used a little bit more variation, you know, kind of like Fist. Fist has a bunch of combos you can do. Death's Door has like one combo you can do, but there's a bunch of ways to mix it up by adding in those special moves and combat rolls. And being that it is kind of like a Souls-like experience, I mean, it's an easier Souls-like. It's not like super difficult. It does have its moments where it does get a little challenging. You know, sometimes you'll have like a weird enemy configuration. I guess the hardest parts of the game, besides from the boss fights, obviously, there's these chests that you go into that have like several waves of enemies, and that you know, they can get a little tough, especially if you're using the umbrella weapon, which I have done 2 playthroughs of now. So you know, it's a very good game. Like I said, the soundtrack and the visuals really hold it up. The story is also pretty good, about a crow who is, you know, tasked with fetching the souls of the deceased, or the ones who need to be killed. Like the giant souls are these people or things, beings, I guess you could call them, that have lived for too long, and they've started to grow a little bit angry, you know, so you gotta hunt them down, get their souls, and try and break down Death's Door, which is the name of the game. The final boss fight is also like this really good culmination of every boss that you face in the game, along with some variations, obviously throw it in there, since it is a whole new boss in itself. And I thought that was really smart of them, you know, because you can, once again, it's all about those patterns, so you can kind of get the pattern down of, oh yeah, this boss did this, and this boss did that, so I kind of know already how to dodge around it. But you do need to still watch for the change-ups, you know, don't get cocky, kid, that's what you gotta say. So yeah, I mean, I love the crow character. I like all the characters that you meet in the game as well. One of my favorites is the Frog King. He just kind of comes out of nowhere. He's pretty funny. You know, Grandma's really good. Pothead. You know, there's just so many memorable characters in here. I mean, there's the octopus who's pretending to be a human. You know, he's like using a dead body of a human to kind of talk to you and stuff like that. It's all, you know, it all kind of works together in this wonderful art style. And there are some sad parts to the game, but for the most part, I really felt joy while playing it, and I think you would too.
It wouldn't be the first time the Psychonauts underestimated Maligula's power.
Fire! Leave it to me.
Yes, number 2 is Psychonauts 2. If you had asked me back in April what my favorite game of the year was going to be, I would have said Psychonauts 2. And if you had asked me that before the next game came out, I probably still would have said Psychonauts 2 all the way up until October. But it's interesting because I really love the game. I really do. I think it's like one of the best games that came out this year. It was a perfect continuation of the story. It was a perfect, like, advancement of, like, mechanics that they had in the original game. After playing the original Psychonauts, I really was like, wow, I appreciate Psychonauts 2 so much more, because they actually built upon what the original game set up. They even follow off from the VR game, which was supposed, like, I thought it was just like the side story that wasn't going to matter. It actually mattered quite a lot. It had a major character for the second game in it. And I think the story beats for Psychonauts 2 are excellent. Each brain you go into is so unique. Each character is kind of dealing with a different problem, and you help them with their emotional baggage, with the different problems that they are experiencing. And it's such a lovely, well-written game. There's so many great characters in here. They introduced so many good characters. I wish they had done more with the interns. I feel like the interns have such a major role at the end that they really could have done a lot more with them as characters throughout the entire game. But I understand you kind of got to focus on these, you know, these characters that you are mostly interacting with. I think it had some really great plot points in there too. There's a great plot twist at the end of the game that I thought was just so amazing. And yes, I'm going to spoil it right now. 3, 2, 1, spoilers inbound, skip ahead about 10-15 seconds, but when they revealed that the grandma is actually like the main villain of the game that you've been like fearing, I thought that was just such a great twist, and also having the mailroom guy be the main villain of the game. He put his brain into the director. I thought that was just such a great twist. You know, I was like, whoa. You know, it kind of left me a little bit speechless. And I felt like throughout the entire game, they did such a good job of keeping the quality high, you know, keeping the fun high as well. I feel like there's not one single area that you go to, one single brain that you go to that is not good. You know, they start off with a great sequence where you're in like the dentist's brain, and the visuals are like crazy dental visuals, like teeth and stuff everywhere. I thought that it was such a great visceral opening to the game. And the next brain you go into is like a laid back kind of club, and then there's also you know, one of the brains you go into, you kind of mess up for her, and you know, it turns from like this fun go lucky you know, like well put together brain into like this, you know, maternity ward / gambling / whatever. You know, they did such a good job of like turning things on. You know, they did such a great job with this game. I don't know what else to say. There's really no negatives that I can think of. I feel like they did such a great job with it. I guess the only thing I could say that is negative, just like the grind of getting money in the game to buy, you know, the upgrades that you need or the badges that you want to get. You know, I feel like getting money in the game is a little bit restrictive, especially because you got to go around the hub world. You collect like 20 mine fragments at a time, and you're trying to like save up like 3,000 to get like this, you know, one of the upgrades. I felt like in the first game you got lots of more money. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like that's the one thing in the game that I can say, like, yeah, you know, they could have done a little bit better with how they handled the money situation in the game. But like I said, the rest of the game is just so wonderfully designed, so wonderfully done. You know, it takes a lot of inspiration from the last game, but it does its own unique thing with every single level, and that's what I love. You know, one of my favorite levels was where you go inside like the bottles. You know, this guy has like a drinking problem, and he lost his husband. And you go into like these bottles, and he's bottled, like that's the allegory is like he bottled up his emotions. So you're going through these areas, and there's like, you know, he's got like his, you know, his head, he's like a gardener, so his head is like a plant, and it can move the water out of the way and do stuff with that. It was just some really cool sequences. There's one area where it's like a, you know, like a 60s, you know, vibe where, you know, someone's having sensory overload because their brain has been in a jar for like the past like 50 years or something like that, so they're having sensory overload. And Jack Black sings a song in the game. Very, very cool. It was a very cool, it was almost like an open world. You go to like these different areas, and you get like, you know, you get the foods, you get this part of the band, you get this part of the band, etc., etc. Yeah, just lots of really fun things, lots of good story beats. There's nothing much more I can say other than if you haven't played the game, please do. It's a very fun action 3D platformer. It's right up my alley, and it's a very fun game, very good continuation of the story from, you know, the game that came out 20 years ago. They somehow managed to make a game that the events are right after the last one. 20 years have passed since they made that last game, and they made this game feel so fresh and so good, but it also retained that fun Psychonauts characteristics that you come to know and love. They improved the visuals in the game. They made the character designs less creepy in this game. They got back the voice actor for Raz. Like, every character reprised their voice roles, and it was just such a fun nostalgia trip at first, and then it becomes something very, very unique, something very its own, and that's why Psychonauts 2 is so, so good. But is it the best game of the year? I really was having trouble deciding between these top two, but in the end, I decided to make the next game my game of the year. Let's go. What the fuck? Yes, Inscription is the sleeper hit of the year. So many people say they want to play this game, but they haven't dived into it. Or maybe they've played a little bit and said, I'll come back to it. But you gotta come back to it. This game is so good on so many different levels. First off, the art style, the art direction of the game. Very unique, very visceral, right? I like using that word. It's a game that looks creepy, and it plays so well. It starts out as this simple card battler. You got a basic set of cards to use, and you're going up against this dark, foreboding, shadowy figure, and really all you can see is his eyes. And he puts on these different masks to become different characters, like the fisherman, the miner, and the trapper, and the mushroom dudes. And there's just so many different elements working together. And you can get up and you can explore the cabin. You can find little secrets in the cabin. And that's the one thing I always tell people: if you're struggling to get through the game, explore the cabin. Cut out your eyeball, you know? Do the things that you think are going to be detrimental to you, but they actually help you in the long run. They reveal secrets. There's multiple different layers to this game that people just don't see at the beginning, and I didn't see at the beginning. When I first played this game and recorded the first impressions on my podcast, I hadn't gotten past this first part of the game yet. I thought that the main gist of the game was this card battler where, when cards died, they would give you bones. You had to sacrifice cards for the more powerful ones. You would get, it was just one of those games that you kind of got through, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons type adventure on a board. And I thought at the end of it, that would have been it. But no, you get to the end of the game and it completely turns the entire game on its head. And yes, I will be talking major spoilers for probably the rest of the video here, the podcast here, because I really have to explain why this game is so good on so many different levels. The story of the game is very interesting. It starts you off, you're pretty much seeing the real world stuff through the lens of the camera, and you are the person playing the game, obviously, and the character in the game. You are that character playing the game, and they're pointing a camcorder at their monitor. So things will happen every so often, and you'll actually hear the person playing the game speak, something weird happened, and the guy will go, what the fuck, and you'll kind of hear that for a second, and it kind of puts you into the game even more, right? Because you're thinking the same thing. Something weird happens, like you get a card that's just completely static, and you don't know exactly what it does, and the guy goes, what the hell is this, and you're thinking the same thing, what the hell is this? I might as well pick it up, I guess, see what it does. And as you go through that first part of the game, fighting the first character in the game, and you think that he's so foreboding, and every time he defeats you, you have 2 lives. Every time he defeats you, he takes your picture, and you can combine cards from your deck that you had to make a new card that will appear in the game. So you can make your ultimate card, and that's what you kind of have to do. You have to play through the game so many times, and you have to combine your different cards so many times that you eventually get this really, really good card. So my card was that ended up winning me the entire thing. It had a 3-way attack attached to it. It had 3 damage, base damage, with 2 health base defense. And it was only worth 1 sacrifice, and that was the card that kind of you can upgrade your cards throughout the plane of the board. You can do a bunch of things with your card, and if you draw that card first every single time, along with the fact that I had a bonus thing attached to my squirrels that made them continuously every time a squirrel died, it would come back to my hand. And that was just the ultimate thing. I could sacrifice a squirrel, it would come back to my hand, I could put it back on the board to help defend myself even more, or even put more cards on the field. And I felt so confident, and I was able to blaze through the rest of the game with this very unique but very overpowered setup for my deck. And it was just so amazing, that experience of beating the final boss of the first part of the game is such an amazing experience. And then you realize at the end of the game, I should have explored more, because the camera has no film in it. So you can actually explore the area around you, find the little things you need to advance the game, and then beat the game again, put the film into the camera, take a picture of the dude, which causes him to become a picture on the wall, and then you get the new option for the game, which is start a new game. Because when you start the game up on the floppy disk, you're continuing off of an already started game. You can select a new game option. So when I did that, I had no clue what I was in for. and all of a sudden you select that new game option on the main menu, and it throws you into something completely different. It's still a card battler at its core, but now it has a retro pixel art style, and you meet all four of these main characters in the game who were turned into cards that you were playing with in the first act, and they're talking to you, and you're doing things with them, and you're playing the game like it's supposed to be played. The game was supposed to, like, out of the box would have been played if you had played the game from the get-go. And it's such a cool thing that the game changes so hardcore. There's packs you can unlock with different play styles, you know, and you know how you would sacrifice characters and you would get bones. Well, now there's an entire deck based around skeletons and bones, and there's the guy who needed the blood sacrifice, the beast guy. He has his own playing area too. So you learn his kind of like, you know, what happened with that. There's another new character that's a robot, and he's trying to. He's literally just he's very straightforward with you. He's like, hey, I want to take over this game. You know, I feel like we need to take over this game. His play style uses energy to be able to play cards. Then there's another guy who uses like runes or whatever, and depending on what runes you have, you can play that card. So if you have a green rune, you can play green cards. If you have an orange rune, you can play orange cards. His was the hardest one to master. I did win a few rounds with him, but I feel like the battery system is just so much better than everything else in the game. But I still had fun learning all these different deck styles, building new decks in this kind of like mini game within the game. You know, this, I would call it Act 2 of the game. And once you're done, you defeat all 4 of the bosses, and you're able to ascend and become one of the bosses, right? Wrong. Act 3 of the game starts, and PO3 is the guy's name. He takes over the game, and it becomes more like the first act, except it's got this sci-fi feel to it. And, you know, PO3, he has like this, you know, this sci-fi hologram board, and you're going along this board. It's a different style than what you originally were going for. As you go through PO3's sci-fi world, there's so many cool elements to this game. Like, there's one boss fight where you literally are fighting your friends list on Steam, and their cards are like these really good cards, and you're trying to beat your friends on Steam. I mean, I smashed Player 2 into a pulp. I destroyed Tim Rules. I destroyed Callus. I killed General Kenobi, and I felt so bad doing it. But it was such a cool experience. It was such a cool boss fight. And then there's another boss fight where you literally select files on your computer. The bigger the file, the better. It does more damage to the boss when you actually get to that point where you can damage them. It was such a cool concept. It was so cool of actually browsing files on my computer inside the game. And picking the biggest file that I could find, and I smacked that bitch out of this world when I fucking found a game file that was like 100 gig, or not 100 gigs, but it was like a 60 gig game and I just chose it and defeated it. I was like, that was such a cool fucking boss fight. There's so many cool things in this game. The third act definitely shines in the variety of it all. And as you go through the game, you get like these elements that you learned in the second act of the game, like. You can, like, now you have like the runes show up, the blue, the yellow, the orange, and the green runes show up, but they do something a little bit different, you know? They do improve your monsters and stuff like that. I mean, it's really hard to explain everything that's going on in this game, and there's just such, like, everything just kind of piles on top of each other, and it's continuously just improving the experience and just making it so much, like, more and more interesting. And the base game is already super interesting and super fun. It's so crazy to me that I can love a game so much. And it was just such a really, really good experience. I feel like if you haven't played Inscription, you are missing out on the best game that I have played this year. And it might be the best game that I've played since God of War from 2018. I mean, it is so fucking good. It is such a unique and interesting experience. And that's not even mentioning that the end of the game is so fucking good, dude. Like, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away, but if you know, you know. The ending of the game is so good. They did this developer did such a good job of making the ending like it's a surprise. It's a crazy finale. There's so much going on. And then on top of all that, the developer released a beta mode or like a an early access mode for the endless mode in the game that features the first act of the game, where you just play the game and it gets harder and harder and harder as you go through different areas. And I have been loving that. I have been playing that almost every single day that I have time. I've been booting it up, playing through a run and trying to get as far as I can. And they take out some of those elements, like the super overpowered cars that you can create. They take out that stuff and they make it more of like a regular, not regular, but more of like a straightforward experience where you're just trying to use the cards that they give you to make an ultimate deck and get as far as you can. And I really hope they do something like that with PO3's area. I hope that they do that with each of the characters' playstyles. You know, I would love to see a fully fleshed out dual disc battling system that they do for the guy with the runes. I would love to see a fully fledged out kind of like chess style play thing like they showed for the Bone Lady. You know, there's just so many good elements of this game that I'm hoping that they flesh out a lot more, either in mods or beta modes or expansions to the game. But the base game itself is still so good. I mean, I gave it a perfect 5 out of 5, and I stand behind that. I stand behind that. I think that this is a perfect experience. It is exciting. It's fun. It's got a bit of a horror element in there, especially through the first part of the game. There's this, you know, this environment that you can explore. It's got a bunch of secrets that you can unravel. It is just such a fantastic game, and if you haven't played Inscription, you gotta play. You gotta play it. There's no other way around it. If you don't like card battlers, give it a try. I mean, I don't know what to say. I think that this is like the best. I think this is a perfect game. I really do. I think this is a 5 out of 5. And if you don't believe it's a 5 out of 5, you got something wrong with you. So yeah, I mean, I know that it's not like the most obvious thing this year, but I did try to give as many hints as I could as to what games are going to be towards the top of my list. There are plenty of tweets I sent out where I said, wow, Death's Door is a top 5 game this year. Inscription's a top 5 game this year. Psychonauts, top 5 game this year. If you missed them, sorry. I also utilized the new status feature on Discord. There, for Resident Evil Village, I actually put a 4 instead of an A in there for my status of what I was thinking for, and I left that on for 5 hours. And if you didn't get that, sorry. There are so many hints that I gave this year in podcasts, on Twitter, on social medias, during live streams. You know, it's kind of odd to me that so many people were struggling, you know? But hey, you know, that's the name of the game. So congratulations to the people who... actually, first off, I should say thank you to the people who joined the Game of the Year competition, the people who tried to guess the Game of the Year, the people who made their top 15 list to try and guess mine, and I just appreciate that. Also, thank you to everyone who's currently listening to it as well, listening to this podcast/video as well. I do appreciate that with much love for that. And like I said, if you don't line up with my game picks, that's fine. Let me know what your games were that you loved this year, what your favorite game of the year was. Let me know. I would love to know, and that's a genuine thing. I would love to know that. If you're listening to the podcast version, scamper on over to my YouTube channel, Yemmy the Ferret, and write a comment. Ask, say what your favorite game was this year. Give me your top 10 list, top 15 list. I would love that. I always love to, I always want to know what other people's top games were. This year I did not ask on Twitter what people's top game was. I didn't get enough responses last year, and I wanted to kind of trim down the video a little bit. But thank you so much to everyone who's listening. I really do appreciate you. I'm Yemmy the Ferret. Hope you enjoyed, and I am out of here. So long.